And so it's all about love. All about love. Only love. So if there is a sense that love is not present, then where is love? Where is love hiding? Why does love not seem to be present? What are the obscurations that are seeming to hide love? If there is only love, and it's all about love, and what is happening if we feel not to be in the knowing of that love? The invitation to love is always present. It's like this moment, here now, the presence of now is the outstretched hand of love to itself. Love is here. There is only one, and that one is love. Anything that seems to be obscuring the love is a creation of the mind, an overlay, a projection, right? We are one in love, and love just loves. And anything else is a creation of the mind. What a profound possibility to take absolute responsibility for whatever we're creating. That nothing outside of us is creating the appearance. We are one with the Creator. It's a divine orchestration, and we are one with the divine. We're creating out of the resonance. We're creating out of the sense of what we are. It's not about doing, it's about being. And it's about being yourself, being the love that you are. Only looking for the love inside your own heart, not imagining that love is something that you need to earn or bargain for, or that you will ever get from the external, from anyone else. That in the knowing of the love that you are, you have a sense of wholeness, where there is actually no need, no desire, let's say, for love in the play, because you know the love that you are. And in the knowing of the love that you are free. The meeting with all other beings is in the love, is in being the love. And in a way, this is what this great unfolding is all about. It is about discovering, remembering the love that is all the way through. Identifying only with the love that you are. Being the love that just loves. That you are the love, the presence of love in which all possible healing happens. You are the healing love, where all transmutation and residues of protections and conditionings shift and unfold. You are that love. It's like you're a fully self-contained, fully equipped vehicle. You have everything that is required to carry this unfolding to its deepest possibility. And yet part of the play of the human experience is that the human heart loves to connect, right? So there's a great beauty to having companions and to sharing this unfolding. There's a great beauty to it because it's in the relational dynamics that we get to meet the core stresses and reactions and resistances and triggers that arise in relational dynamics. And they arise in relational dynamics because they started in relational dynamics, right? And so we need the connections and the interactions in order for the relational dynamics to create the circumstances that will trigger and stir and bring forth and reveal all of the ways that we are protected from love, obscuring the glory of love, and essentially where we are not loving, where we are not loving ourselves, where we are not meeting in love. So there's such an extraordinary possibility in this unfolding, such an extraordinary possibility to remember the love and to use the play as a means to see through all of the obscurations, all of the ways that we have built protections that keep us seemingly apart from love. But of course, in truth, we're never apart from love. We are love. We are one love, one heart, one being. And the whole play is this possibility of remembering the love that we are and freeing all of the patterns and frequencies of limitation, all of the karmic obscurations, conditionings, so that we can live and shine as this love. What actually is this love? You know, it's really not what we imagine it is either. It's not what we have learned. We're not speaking of human love. We're not speaking of you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. We're not talking about I love you because you see me and because you give me the things that make me feel happy. And now I don't love you because now you don't behave in the ways that I want you to behave. We're not speaking about love as a bargaining tool or a currency. We're not speaking of love as an emotional high. We're speaking about love, which is the unprotected openness, true love, perfect love, divine love, is the unprotected, pristine openness that is the true nature of all beings. It's the underlying, we could say the substratum, but it's the underlying essence of everything. And it's the substance of everything. It's all about love. In a way, we have to see through the concepts of what we think love is and what we think loving is. Because what we tend to think loving is are things that please me. Well, that's loving because that pleases me. That's loving because you remembered my birthday. That's loving. And it's not loving, right? If you don't behave in those ways. But that isn't love. That is not love. That's ego ping pong, right? Relational dynamics are not actually truly about compromise. True relational dynamics are about being yourself so fully, fully aligned with your laws of nature, not moving and shape-shifting to please anyone, not compromising the truth of your heart to please anyone. But aligning with love is to be aligned with the laws of nature. We all have different ways of relating. We all have different laws of nature that mean that how we flourish and feel aligned are different. So we can't follow any kind of ideas that are dictated to us by others. And we can't follow any ideas that maybe society tells us how we have to behave, because actually none of that is loving. Gulp, right? The majority of the ways that we've learned to live are not actually loving. And that's because generally in the early life, even though on a certain level, the parents and guardians loved us, they also had their own conditionings, which meant that they asked us to shapeshift and behave in certain ways that fitted their ideas of how a child should behave, how you have to be in the world. And none of it was true. And next gulp, none of it was actually loving. It was never truly mirroring the unique nature. It was never mirroring and seeing, really truly seeing, like love seeing love. It was a set of conditions, seeing and on a certain level judging and manipulating. You need to be like this, you need to be like that, you need to eat this, you need to behave in this way, you need to learn these things, you need to be successful at these things. And we learned to survive through shape-shifting and moving away from our intuitive knowing. And essentially in that, we moved away from the alignment with our laws of nature, and we moved away from the knowing of love. And we started moving in a needs-met structure where we learned that love was bargaining, love was behaving in certain ways, love was being seen, love was maybe being gifted, love was moving in certain ways. But so much of that is discordant, so much of it is distorted, and it's not actually the reality. So the glory of this great unfolding is that we're coming back to the remembrance of the frequency of love. And the frequency of love is the frequency of openness. It's the frequency of heart, of being. It's the frequency of light that is pristine and untainted. We're coming back to remember what it is to be loving, to be love, how to love, truly love, actually starts with being the love yourself. So we hear you can only love another according to the depth of love you have for yourself, right? This is where this kind of a little saying really starts to land and make sense. You cannot love another truly unless you are meeting in love, where there are no conditions and there are no needs and there are no desires and there's no judgment and there's no bargaining. Often when we really open to the presence of being and we open to realize that what love truly is, we can't actually act out the same kind of relational dynamics. We suddenly see through all of the ways that we have been fooling ourselves and deeply compromising in order to get our needs met in certain kind of relational dynamics, how we're trying to be seen, how we imagine that certain kind of behaviors are loving, and certain kind of behaviors aren't. But all of that is part of the overlay. All of that is part of the Maya, the mind's creation. We're looking upon through a set of filters. We're looking upon a flow of perfect love through a set of filters. And then we're judging others and their behaviors because our needs are not being met. But ultimately, what's happening is that we're not meeting our own needs. We're not resonating at the frequency of love. We're resonating at a frequency of deficiency. We're resonating at a frequency of fear, and then being surprised why life is appearing to not meet our needs. Right? This is really important, what is being spoken right now, right? If you can receive this and let this really land, it's shattering in the best kind of way. That if we're not meeting our own needs, if we're not being the love, then life will not appear to be meeting our needs. Life will only meet our needs and be a reflection of love when we're resonating as love, right? So if we're resonating in some kind of frequency of deficiency or lack, then that frequency will create the appearance of characters that are just reflecting our own sense of lack and all of the ways that we are not meeting our own needs, that we are not in intimacy with ourselves, right? This is why when it's all about love, it's all about your own heart. It's all about being the love. The whole life shifts. The whole play shifts because you are resonating at the frequency of the knowing, of the being. You're resonating at the frequency of love. And of course, then resonating at finer and finer frequencies as the discordant patterns of conditioning and protection unravel in the presence of love. It's like the frequency of love gets finer and finer. And the frequency of love is what is necessary for the residues of our patternings to feel the safety, feel the openness and the natural agendaless, non-judgmental, non-opinionated, non-agendered presence that these places that we have pushed down, tucked away, these places will only open in the presence of a love that is without conditions. So what we're speaking of is living as unconditional love, living as unconditional life. So the patterns that our parents and guardians and caretakers very kindly projected onto us and passed down to us because they had generously been passed down to them. We then, of course, pass them on to our children very kindly and generously. And that's okay. There's a total innocence in that. And yet, what a glorious possibility when we come to the possibility of healing and perpetuating these discordant patterns in ourselves. And you know what happens is so exquisite, so incredibly exquisite, is that as we heal the patterns within our own functioning, it's like we heal the patterns behind us and in front of us. We heal the whole ancestral line of certain patterns, even when the family members have left their bodies, have passed on out of away from the surface of life. It's like we're one in the heart, we're one in love. It doesn't matter if the soul is incarnated or not. as we heal these patterns, something so profound happens, is that we have the capacity to heal. We could call it like ancestral or generational karmas. And we also shift the patterning within ourselves, which then shifts the patterning within the children, the grandchildren, right? It starts to reorganize everything, because everything is light. Everything is resonant light dancing. So it's not the way that it looks like. It's not concrete. It's not solid. It's all resonant light. It's all appearance. And when we change our frequency, when we shift our frequency, we shift all of the patternings where we have inherited, let's say, patternings, and where we have passed on those patternings. It's like a shifting in the whole line. Extraordinary, right? Exquisite. And of course, at the same time, it's more all-encompassing than that, because it's always in service to the whole. So on that level of life, the patterns shift. But at the same time, the reverberations of these kind of patterns shifting also, of course, cannot help but affecting the whole. They're shifting the collective consciousness. What an extraordinary service, right? That as we live as love, as we open to and transmute the discordant patterns and shift these dysfunctional ways that we have learned to live, kind of aligned with the human collective, as we see through, pull out our threads of entanglement with the collective, reorganize, reorient, recalibrate our nervous systems, which is essentially recalibrating the light patterning of consciousness out of discordance and back to the remembrance of purity. Transmuting and reorganizing the patternings back to the remembrance and alignment, attunement with the frequency of perfect love, allows us to live as this love, recalibrate the whole life picture, right? This is where things really start to shift, because we're starting to create from a frequency and an openness of the infinite field of possibility with an alive, vital energy that's the wellspring of the source, that's like a pure potentiality, which has the power and aliveness to be this extraordinary flow of creativity. And really, what is happening is that we're moving from a nervous system, a consciousness that is untangled and pure, resonating as love, and creating from this the appearance of life as a reflection of what we're living. And yes, we can create the reflection of the discordance and the dysfunction that allows us to see our blind spots, but we can also create the reflection of the heart resonating as love, as bliss. This is where we're creating the appearance of heaven on earth, right? This is where we're living in the Satya Loka, right? The realm of truth, the realm of freedom, the age of enlightenment, we could say. We're resonating and living at a vibrational frequency that is finer than the frequency of the collective, of the collective human condition. And we're living completely in symbiotic relationship with the collective. We're not divided from it. We're absolutely engaged. But the life frequency is resonating finer at the frequency of bliss, at the frequency of love. And as we're opening and resonating more finely, we have this capacity to heal and transmute and clear the remaining discordant patterning. We keep working on the subtle threads, right? It's an ongoing project, but it's not a big project of suffering and stress. It's fine-tuning. It's delicate, subtle fine-tuning. And the fine-tuning is, oh, it's so beautiful. It's like the fine-tuning is, it's fine-tuning the whole possibility of a human life to be able to be lived at a subtler frequency than it's ever been lived at, right? What is happening has never happened before, right? What is happening in the human realm has never happened before. We are the living, alive evolution of consciousness. The human realm is the living, alive evolution of consciousness, awakening to itself in the process of remembering itself. And either we're very stuck in the dense programming that plays out as separation and division and suffering and stress, or we are, as we are, in the process of refining and opening, purifying, and resonating at finer and finer frequencies, recognizing and knowing what is possible, coming alive in ways that we've never been alive before, resonating as light in ways that we've never had the capacity for before. So in a certain way, we're pioneers, right? Now there are beings, there are high frequency beings, fine frequency beings all over the planet. But these beings have mostly been kind of in isolation and secret, resonating. And we know of, many great beings. We know the stories of great beings that have been pioneering and have been preparing the way. And we have been drawn in by the teachings. We've been drawn in by the light of the guidance that has come before us from these great beings, the saints and sages and siddhas and yogis and beings that hold the frequency of the heart of the wisdom teachings in all traditions, right? And what is happening in this timing right now, this epoch, it's the word that comes, is that we're able now, we have the capacity, consciousness has shifted enough that we have the capacity to resonate and open to the light so that the nervous system can purify and refine and resonate at a frequency of light, a resonance of light that is fine enough that can allow transmutation to happen, that can actually bring about a depth of healing that can carry us out of the fog of the Maya, out of the fog of separation in ways that we haven't maybe been able to really get out of the maze of the mind before. But we have this capacity as the collective is shifting. We have this capacity to see through the fog, the stickiness. It still takes a lot, right? It's not plain sailing yet. It will be at some point, but it's still pioneering. It's still, we're still kind of working with a lot of stickiness, a lot of heaviness in the collective field, a lot of beliefs, a lot of resistance, a lot of stress, right? It's like the wheels are kind of turning in the mud mostly, but we kind of have this capacity to kind of power and be dragged out of the mud by the companions that are guiding us and inspiring us and saying, I've gotcha, right? Here's the frequency of perfect love, right? It's like we can be pulled out of the mud to the capacity that we can now recognize, oh, okay, this is how this works. We're not like stuck in a maze. We're not stuck in a game, like a game board that feels like it has like no way out, like Monopoly or something, right? You're not just going round and round the board, running out of chance cards, running out of money, right? Running out of resources and just stuck going around the game board with no chance of ever winning, right? We're at this point where when we know the being and we can recognize the frequency of being, we recognize the presence, we have this sense of freedom that we start to be able to remember how to intuit. Not exactly how the game works, but we're intuiting, oh, we're not stuck in that game. And the way that this works is that we don't try to fix and change. We're not trying to win the game of life. We're not hoping that somebody will give us their hotels, right? And that we might be able to cash them in and make another few spins around the merry-go-round. We're not wishing like aimlessly for some kind of miraculous happening. We're realizing, wow, I am the miracle. Being, the being is the miracle. The frequency of love is the miracle. I am the miracle. And I don't need to depend on anyone else to bring me a miracle. I don't need anything from the external to wave the magic wand or give me permission or to see me or to leave me an inheritance or God, let something happen good for me, right? We're not at this, we're not being tossed around in the ocean of hope and despair and wishing and setting intentions on that level. We're realizing I am the power. I am the miracle. I am presence is the glory, is the miracle itself. The frequency of love is where the miracles happen, right? And the miracle is, it's not the way that the mind imagines because it doesn't come from some kind of luck or fate or good fortune. It comes from realigning with the fine frequency of your own heart, realigning and attuning with the fine frequency of the love that you are and your intuitive knowing, where the being knows itself. There's a realigning with the intuitive knowing and the recognizing, well, I don't need to fix anything or change anything. It's just about resonating here as the love that I am, and then allowing the miracles to happen, right? Allowing the appearance of life to shift, to reflect the frequency of where you're living. And you know, in that, even the reflection of your blind spots start to be recognized as miraculous blessings, right? Start to be recognized as grace. Everything is recognized as the most extraordinary grace because we're free from the game board of life, of the human condition. We're no longer stuck in the mud, depending upon the new age to free us. We realize, oh, the new age, yes, there's certain truths in that, but it's still very sticky and bound in separation and ego patterning and discordance. There's still an awful lot of me trying to get things for me and trying to be seen, right? It's like the exit door is in the presence of being, and it's in allowing life to humble us, living from the heart, living at the frequency of love, of openness, and allowing life to humble away all of the ways that we have been conditioned to operate, to function from selfish gain and power imbalance and wanting and desiring for the me, right? It's a complete recalibration. And it's like we can't make that change in the play of the world. We have to be the change, right? Just like Gandhi told us all those years ago, great beings that recognized you have to be the change. To be the change is not to be an activist in the world, but to be an activist in the silence of the heart, to be an activist in your frequency, to be an activist in the wilds of consciousness. Be the change is to stop living in allegiance with separation, listening to the news, collaborating with the gossip and the stories, believing that the whole play of the world is reality. It's to stop collaborating with the frequency of fear. Just stop. No more conversations about stories that are fiction of the mind's creation. It's fear begetting fear, fear begetting fear. And it's just like a mushy mess, just creating more of the same. The way that we be the change is to be yourself, collaborate with truth, collaborate with love, collaborate and be the change by having the courage and capacity to not engage in those ways, not sit around talking about wars and poverty and misfortunes. Recognize that you're creating all of those images on the screen. And if you collaborate with it, that you're just perpetuating it. The way to change is to be an activist in the field of miracles, is to be the change by recognizing that life is not misery, that life is joy. Life is not suffering. Life is exquisite bliss. Life is not stress and pain. Life is exuberance, wonder, awe, and we have the capacity in our human nervous system to free ourselves from the discordant patterns that keep us trapped in the belief that life is misery, that we're trapped by our karmas. We have the capacity to resonate at a frequency where we can heal, truly heal the residues of our conditionings and protections. And, you know, even the frequencies that we imagine are traumas, we have the capacity to start resonating at a frequency. Something incredibly profound is that this whole unfolding is not about us healing and fixing our traumas so that we can be with our traumas. We know how to be with our traumas. We've been living in our traumas and our discordance our whole lives. This unfolding isn't about that. This unfolding is about being able to handle the joy, being able to be willing, courageous enough to actually live joyful, live at the frequency of love. It's about being able to handle the extraordinary happiness and exuberance of a life lived in bliss, right? This is the work that we are up to. We're not up to the work of psychological healing and being able to handle our traumas. We've lived in pain and stress and suffering in the whole of the human life. It's not about facing our traumas and meeting them on the psychological level and fixing them and wallowing in the stories of them. This is not what this is about. It's about realizing that trauma is caused where our needs were not met. A story is a story. Some stories seem to be more alive with despair and hardship and hurt and pain and abuse and violation than others. But the truth is, in the relative world, everything is relative, right? Every life has its fair share of hardship, abuse, pain, violation that have created patterns that we call trauma. And the trauma is where our needs were not met, where our intuitive knowing was trampled on, where the love that we are, was not mirrored to us because it was being handed down, right? Just as we spoke at the beginning of this sharing. So we have the capacity to heal traumas, not by going into the stories, not by engaging in the trauma so much as recognizing that we heal the traumas by shifting the frequency and actually by not trying to fix them through story and psychological functioning. Although for some beings, there will be a depth of being ingrained in the afflictions that can be held. Afflictions are ego patternings that are so deeply protective because of traumas that the patternings are very intense in their holding. And then it can be that a little bit of work in the psychological realm can be necessary to kind of dig us out of these afflictions, dig us out of these really dense holding patterns. So it's not that work in the psychological realm is wrong or bad, not at all. It's just that we graduate. We have to realize we have to be willing and courageous enough to graduate from the psychological realms, that we use that kind of work to bring us so far. But at some point, we have to realize that we're ready to graduate from dancing in the psychological realms, and that we're ready to start resonating at a finer frequency where the true deep healing can happen. And it happens as we cultivate the capacity to feel and be so present with our nervous systems as the feelings and sensations are met and released and allowed to be as they are. So much of it is about allowing the feelings to be felt without actually trying to change them. Because the whole patterning of the young life was that we were constantly told to not feel the way we were feeling. So if we keep continuing it on, don't feel like that, change it. Positive affirmations, right? No, 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 no. It's all perpetuating the same patterning. Focus on the good things, focus on the positivity. It's never going to change the deep ingrained karmic patternings, because those patternings are frequencies of light, they're frequencies of lack, of deficiency. And the only way these frequencies shift is in the presence of a frequency where they can recognize the essence nature. If these patterns of discordant frequency, frequencies of limitation, are being met with interception that says, no, this is how you have to be, this is how to fix it, this is what you need to do, this is how you need to work with that. All of that is still saying the way that you feel is not okay. Whereas when these places are met with absolute unconditional presence, this says, in the silence, you can feel the way that you feel. And actually, you're so welcome to feel. Feel all the feelings. Let it rip through you. Let everything be allowed. Because it's realigning the intuitive knowing, so that this holding pattern, this holding place, learns. My intuitive knowing knows. It's reorganizing and recalibrating so that the intuitive knowing can be, let's say, in a way, truly validated and mirrored in love. You know what's best for you. You know how you feel. You know if tears are what is needed. You know if an expression of anger is needed. You know if the ways that you're feeling is the way that you want to express. And this just watches and allows and holds. You can feel how you feel. You can express what needs to be expressed. And there's nothing, no interception that tells you you need to fix it, change it, or be different. In the presence of unconditional love, divine love, a true field of openness, even the deepest traumas can be healed, right? It's not that it's plain sailing and easy. It's intense and it's deep. And yet it's incredibly profound that we are at this point in the evolution of consciousness where we have this capacity to not be stuck and burdened in the denser frequencies of the story and the narrative, and feeling unfixable and broken beyond the possibility of remembering our divinity. Coming to the presence of being and recognizing the frequency of that which is already free gives us the absolute living possibility of remembering the freedom of that which has never been touched, remembering the innocence, the purity of what has never ever been disturbed by any story, any storyline, or any patterning of trauma. There's a part of us that has never ever been affected, that has remained innocent and pristine through the whole play of the life. And what we are inviting is that we come to remember in our direct experience this frequency, and we start living and resonating at this frequency and coming alive in this field of wide open, pure consciousness. We're open to this field of grace, this field of divine light, where miracles can happen, but miracles are happening because we're shifting the frequency and we're clearing great wadges of trauma collectively in the light, in the frequency of light, right? It's not even that we have to live through everything. We don't. We don't actually have to live through and experience and analyze and process. We don't. Huge amounts of discordant patterning can just be illuminated and cleared in the frequency of love, in the light when it's bright enough, right? And this is, in a way, what we are really coming into, is this possibility to embody the light, bring the light of being, the frequency of the pure divine light into every aspect, every multidimensional aspect of our being and living, so that we can bring rejuvenation and we can transmute and refine at the level of the light, at the level of the patterning, and not so much at the level of the psychological or the mind, that we're realigning and we're purifying in the field of consciousness. That we're not trying to fix and change at the level of the mind or the human functioning, that we're actually recalibrating the whole frequency of the field. So as the speaking comes, just recognizing that the speaking itself is a transmission of this light. The speaking itself is the field of light. Transmutation is happening. The frequency of the field is recalibrating and being cleared, being purified, being fine-tuned. And it's all about your openness to receive. And the more that you're saying yes to the being and you're open as the being, the more receptive you are to the fine frequencies of light, really penetrating and pervading the nervous system, the consciousness, and allowing the kind of reorganization that is possible to happen. You don't really have to do anything. It's the opening to allow. And as there's an opening to allow, the system is being recalibrated to bring more of the fine frequency in, so that you have more capacity to be the light for yourself, right? That you have the capacity to be the light and hold yourself, right? So it happens when we gather, and a lot of shifting and attunement and recalibration can happen. But part of that is that it's not being done for you or to you, is that it's happening in the field that you are. And as it's happening, you're being recalibrated to have that capacity yourself. It's like you're being initiated by the light, recalibrated by the light, by the fine frequencies of love, the openness, the open flows, right? So this is like a wide open field of grace where true healing happens. It's like a field of true healing. It's the field where the transmutation of discordant patterns happens. So in this moment, just to notice what is happening. What are you noticing? What is resonating? You might feel the resonance of the being, the frequency of the being, more alive, like attuned to the frequency. Now you might feel this frequency more up around the head or in the head, around the head, in your eyes, as if it's right inside the head. You might feel it in the throat or the heart. You might feel it in the arms or the hands. You might feel it deep in the belly. You might feel it resonating through the whole sense of body. Because what is happening is that as we align with the frequency of being, where the being knows itself, the subtle body, the light body is coming online. The ability of the being to know itself is a subtle perception. And where this frequency of knowing is coming online, there's light, there's illumination happening, right? So as the illumination happens, which is your knowing and the flow of your knowing, you might feel that illumination as light, as a frequency, as a resonance or a vibration, right? Don't get stuck in the words. Don't get stuck in meaning. Just receive what the pointing is pointing to and then come directly to your direct experience. Don't let the words be a distraction, right? Just come to the sense of resonating, of the aliveness, and just notice where that is. Because as you focus upon where that is and where it's really alive, it's bringing more light, more enlivening, right? More of the ability to recognize the knowing and to fine tune and recalibrate and refine in these areas. It's the whole nervous system that is resonating at finer frequencies of light, of resonant light. In a way, the whole sense of what the body is resonating. And just to feel this light resonating everywhere. In this moment, the light is resonating in every single cell at a fine frequency. So see if you can notice that every cell in this moment is resonating at a fine frequency of a light. It's like a golden light, a very bright golden light resonating in every cell of your being. And the golden light resonating at this frequency is the frequency of the being knowing itself and resonating within itself at this golden frequency of subtle knowing, where the sense of being is resonating, let's say, in every single cell. It feels like resonating in every single cell, but you start to feel here a sense of expansion as every single cell starts to feel like a resonant field that is actually boundless. You start to expand through the resonance and the sense of cellular function. You start resonating through the fine frequency of the cells resonating at a fine frequency to the subtlety that the fine frequency isn't only cell in the cells, that it's more atomic, it's more of a quantum resonant field, and that quantum resonant field is everywhere. So this golden light that's resonating in every single cell of your being, it's actually resonating in everything everywhere, right? Everything everywhere. And you're opening to the boundlessness of the quantum field, the sense of I am everywhere, I am infinite, the field is infinite. It's opening to the whole resonant field that is like a quantum mechanical field, which is resonating. And it's like we expand through the sense of our cells in this golden light frequency to the wide open, boundless field, so that the sense of our whole frequency of being is a finer frequency, a finer golden light frequency. And this is our subtle knowing, and this is where our intuitive knowing comes online. It's where the remembering is happening. The remembering, oh, this is the truth of who I am. This is the being that I am. This is the boundless field. I am everywhere. I am openness. I'm not contained within the physical body. I am open. I am light. I'm resonating everywhere. Can feel that sense of expanding out of the sense of the physical body to the subtle body, to the light body, to the infinite body of awareness, right? The whole wide open field. And just as these words come, not to get stuck in any idea of, oh, I'm getting it or I'm not getting it, or I don't know if that's really happening for me. Just be where you are and just soak it up. Just be soaked in light. Be soaked, saturated in the frequency. Let your heart be absolutely soaked in the frequency of being. Let your heart be absolutely soaked and saturated, permeated with a fine frequency of love, right? Let love have you. Let love just get right in there to your heart and just saturate all of the holding patterns of heart protection. Let the light get right in there and just start to soften those layers of protection, like softening and melting away these layers and these strings and these fibers of discordant patterning. That the light is permeating into the discordant patternings. And the light is pure consciousness. It's resonating as purity, as divinity, as love. And the resonance is resonating and getting right in there to any discordant patterning that's really ready to surface, something that's really on the surface. So you can even be very focused and fine-tuned if you would like in this moment, and you can bring awareness to something that you're aware of that needs a little support, a little bit of a fine frequency blitz, right? You can really invite, just bring a little focus to something that you're aware of that is surfacing or really kind of up for you right now. And let this light frequency flow into these discordant patterns, because these discordant patterns, they're exactly the same essence substance, right? It's like fibers of light fibers, almost like fiber optics, lines and fibers, very fine threads that have just got tangled and knotted and are just holding certain shapes. Whereas the purity are these golden threads of light, just really flowing in the purity of this golden light, very bright and warm and illuminating. And it's just to really feel how this light and this purity is just, it's not actually doing anything, but it's enlivening within the tangled threads. It's enlivening within those tangled threads the frequency of the essence. So imagine a ball of golden string that's in a tangle, and the string is made up of many, many fine fibers. It's not about coming in and picking out the knots, right? And there's nothing coming from the outside and undoing the knots or warming around the knots, although there is a sense of an aura or a halo of warmth around any of these discordant patternings. But how the unraveling is actually happening is that within those fibers that those knots and tangles and shapes are made of, that within those fibers there's a fineness of light frequency that is starting to flow. And as it starts to flow, because it's in a flow of and a frequency of remembrance, it's like the tangles and the discordant shapes and patterns are starting to reorganize and recalibrate. And instead of looking like tangles, they're starting to look like incredible, intricate geometries. They're starting to take their perfect form, like golden light patterns, like golden geometries. They're starting to remember their perfect shape, their divine patterning, right? It's like the patterns were just out of alignment, discordant. So it's like a reorganizing happening. It's like a remembrance of innocence, a remembrance of purity. Everything that we are is made of light. We are made of light. We're made of light patterns. There's an organization and like sacred patterning to the way that our laws of nature present and flow. There's the laws of nature are organized structures that allow the appearance of life. And what's happening is where those organized structures, those pure geometries have moved out of alignment, they're shifting back in, but they're shifting from their internal remembering and restructuring of the light patterns of the fibers. And so the patterns are starting to reorganize, realign, settle out, so that now the light and the flow of knowing, of remembrance, is able to move more fluidly. There's more fluid flow. The flow of the intelligence is being recalibrated and refined. So the patterns of intelligence are being restored to their original divine, pure patterning. So you see here, there's nothing to process. It's just about allowing the reorganization to happen. It's about receiving the, it's like receiving downloads of the pure light codes into our sense of the presence of being, and then allowing the frequency of our intuitive knowing of the being to then permeate all of our functioning and reorganize and recalibrate and bring around true transmutation. So what we've been speaking of is how transmutation happens. When things are surfacing, the transmutation happens, and the remembrance of the essence nature comes back online. And then there's more of a sense of light, more of a sense of being, more of a sense of openness. And the openness is resonating at the finer frequency of love, resonating at the finer frequency of the heart. And the whole nervous system is being refined and purified in this process. That there's an intelligence that's moving everything. There's a wisdom that's moving everything. So just to notice, how are you feeling right now? What are you noticing? Just to notice the sense of being, the stillness, the silence, the simplicity, the knowing, the intuitive knowing of the being that knows itself, the subtle body's perception of the being, that we're not in the mind consciousness, right? We've totally left that game board, and we're in the wild, wide open landscape of consciousness. We're in the field of grace, the resonant field of light, where the intelligence is moving, always moving. Everything that we speak of happening in surface of life language is always actually taking place in this field of light. The speaking is a transmission of that light, an invitation to attune and remember, purify and recalibrate, allow the reorganization to happen. And the more openness and availability there is for that, the deeper it will go. And that's not a hierarchical possibility. It's just that every being is being worked and recalibrated where you are. Everyone is receiving equally, exactly the unique frequencies and realignments that the consciousness is ready for, right? We're being upgraded in exactly the ways that we are ready for. So it's not that the mind could interpret, oh, well, maybe I don't have the capacity and maybe I'm not. That's just collaborating with the fear frequency. Wherever you are, whatever's happening, the recalibration is happening in the unseen. And it doesn't matter what you feel like you know or you recognize. Every being is equally being loved by love, because every being is equally love loving itself. And so it's all about love, right? Remember where we started? It's all about love. It's all about this remembrance of the frequency of love and resonating at this fine frequency and allowing life to be created from here. That we have no idea what is possible. Here we can flow where the creative intelligence can move to create absolutely anything. So far beyond what the mind thinks is possible, so far beyond the ways that we hold ourselves in limitation. Welcome to the field of grace. Welcome to the field of light, the light that you are, the exquisite light that you are. It is just in the saying yes, the holy yes, that invites this light and intelligence to flow where your knowing is. There's a flow of this intelligence, this wisdom light that is constantly recalibrating, constantly transmuting, and constantly creating exactly the appearance on the surface of life of what is needed in order to receive the reflection, to be able to meet the discordance and surface it, right? Nothing is out of place. Nothing is out of place because everything is resonating as a wide open infinite field of light. And it's about attuning to this golden frequency, this pure frequency, the divine light, the frequency of divine wholeness that's resonating in this absolute integrity. The glory, right? It's the frequency of the glory. It's ever available, ever radiant, ever shining in the heart. And it's about opening to it, receiving it, collaborating with it, saying yes to it, living from this frequency, living from the heart as the heart, right? Mm. So resting here, resting here, just allowing